The lecture hall of the Academy of Galactic Sciences was one of the most advanced classrooms in the Orion sector. Suspended holograms of entire planets floated lazily in the air. Rows of tiered seating curved around a central pit where guest lecturers often demonstrated new technologies or theories. Today, however, the subject wasn't astrophysics or wormhole engineering. It was something much older, more primal, combat theory. Professor Vrak, a tall, mantis-like Grixari, clicked his mandibles nervously as he prepared the class. Today, he rasped in galactic standard, we will examine the primitive concept of close-quarters combat. It is an outdated phenomenon in the modern galaxy, largely irrelevant since energy weapons made physical confrontation obsolete. But for historical completeness, we must understand how such barbaric behavior functioned. The class of 70 alien students murmured, their scales, fur, and chitin glinting under the luminescent ceiling. For many of them, combat was something they had only read about in digital archives. To actually see it, that was more a curiosity than anything. Among the students sat Eli Carter, a human exchange student from Earth, the only one of his kind enrolled this year. He had learned to tolerate the endless staring and whispered comments. Humans were still relatively new to galactic society, and most species dismissed them as frail, underdeveloped primates whose only redeeming quality was adaptability. Carter, Professor Vrak's voice cut through the murmurs, his compound eyes locking on Eli. As our representative from Earth, perhaps you could provide us with a demonstration. My research suggests your species indulged heavily in this sort of crude engagement. The room erupted in a dozen forms of laughter, trills, hisses, and clattering mandibles. Eli just raised his eyebrows. He had expected this at some point. Humans were always treated as curiosities in classes like these. Sure, Eli said with a shrug. What exactly do you want me to demonstrate? Vrak gestured with his spindly claws. Merely the basics. Strikes, perhaps. The fundamentals of physical dominance. Nothing dangerous, of course. The professor's tone was almost mocking, as though daring Eli to act out his species' barbarism. All right, Eli said, standing and walking down the steps into the central pit. The other students leaned forward, eager to watch the spectacle. The beginning of the demonstration. Eli took a deep breath, centering himself. It had been years since his days in the Marines, but the drills were burned into his muscle memory. He started with simple stances, feet shoulder-width apart, knees slightly bent, hands raised to guard his face. This, Eli explained, is a basic fighting stance. It keeps you balanced and ready to move in any direction. Some students chuckled. To them it looked absurd. Why stand like that when you could just fly, skitter, or blast an opponent with plasma? Eli ignored them. He demonstrated a jab, a straight punch snapping through the air with a sharp pop. The sound echoed in the hall. The aliens stiffened. None of them expected such speed or precision from a supposedly fragile human. This is a jab. Fast, direct, meant to test range or keep someone back. He followed with a cross, twisting his hips, his knuckles cutting the air with another crack. Then came hooks, uppercuts, and a quick flurry of strikes against an imaginary opponent. Each blow landed with a forceful sound, reverberating through the sterile lecture chamber. By now, the room had grown disturbingly quiet. Dozens of alien eyes, compound and otherwise, followed every motion. But Eli wasn't done. He shifted seamlessly into kicks, front kicks, roundhouses, side kicks, his body moving with practiced efficiency. When he dropped low and performed a sweeping leg motion, a few students gasped aloud. This is close-quarters combat, Eli said calmly. It's not just about brute force, it's about control, precision, and knowing how to break an opponent down. He demonstrated a chokehold using an empty chair, then a joint lock on his own arm to show leverage points. The alien students recoiled at the way he bent the limb, imagining bones and tendons snapping. Humans developed these techniques, Eli continued, because for most of our history, survival depended on it. We fought predators, each other, and even when technology advanced, wars were still fought hand to hand. The horrified reactions. Professor Vrack clicked his mandibles nervously. This had gone far beyond what he expected. "Enough, Carter," he said, but his voice lacked authority. The students weren't laughing anymore. A Charkeen student, a reptilian with thick scales, raised a trembling claw. "Why, you mean you practice this regularly?" "Some people do," Eli said, wiping a bit of sweat from his brow. "Martial arts are still practiced on Earth, both for sport and self-defense." A furry, four-eared Selnari muttered, "You train your young in bone-breaking and flesh-tearing?" Eli smirked. "We call it discipline. Teaches control. Strength isn't useful without restraint." The silence in the room thickened. For most galactic civilizations, combat had been left behind millennia ago. To them, the idea of a species not only preserving but teaching these brutal skills was unthinkable. It was like watching a predator bare its teeth after pretending to be docile. Finally, one of the larger students, a hulking Turok with plated arms, stood. "Human," he said, voice rumbling. "Demonstrate on me." Gasps erupted. It was unthinkable, asking to be struck to test such violence firsthand. But the Turok's curiosity outweighed his caution. He lumbered down into the pit, towering a head taller than Eli, his scales like armor. "Are you sure?" Eli asked, his voice level. "I won't go all out, but you'll feel it." The Turok nodded. "I want to understand." The middle, a test of flesh and bone. They squared off. Eli adopted his stance again, fists raised. The Turok mimicked him clumsily, unused to the posture. "All right," Eli said. "I'll just show you how a basic strike works." He stepped in, driving a clean jab into the Turok's chest. The impact echoed like a hammer striking metal. The Turok staggered back 2 steps, shock flashing in his reptilian eyes. "That was only one strike," he muttered. "Yeah," Eli said casually. "And that wasn't even full power." Murmurs spread through the room like wildfire. Aliens clutched their limbs, as though imagining how fragile they would feel under such force. "Try to grab me," Eli said. The Turok lunged with both arms. In one smooth motion, Eli sidestepped, hooked the Turok's arm, twisted, and brought the massive alien crashing down onto the mat with a thundering slam. The entire class screamed, some in terror, others in disbelief. The Turok thrashed for a moment, but Eli held him with a simple joint lock, applying just enough pressure to make his point. "If I push harder, your arm breaks," Eli said calmly. "If I shift my weight here, your shoulder dislocates. I'm not going to do that, but this is the reality of combat." The Turok panted, eyes wide, before Eli released him and helped him back up. The reptilian's voice was hushed. "I understand now." The court of knowledge. After class, the academy buzzed with fear and fascination. Word of the humans' display spread quickly. Professors whispered in corridors. Students avoided Eli's gaze in the cafeterias. Some treated him like a predator barely leashed. Others stared with newfound respect, or even awe.